Reprendre votre thérapie, d'aller en partie. Votre fils a quand même...
Welcome. I'm your host, and this is uNcomfortable. Welcome back to the show, my friends. I am your host, Eric Szilagyi. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it shared here on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. The world wants to hear your story. It wants to hear your experience. So reach out to me and let's get yours on the next episode of Uncomfortable. If you haven't yet, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. And once you get a chance to listen to a couple of episodes, please make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review. That alone is the one most important thing that you, the listener, can do to help get this show into the algorithm and out in front of more people. With more people listening, you guessed it, that means more great stories coming your way. If video is more your thing, then make sure to subscribe to Uncomfortable Podcast on YouTube, where you can get the video version of most shows. Not this one, though. I apologize, but our guest tonight decided to take himself deep into the forest of Athens, Ohio, and we were not able to do video for this episode. But if video is your thing, make sure you subscribe to Uncomfortable Podcast YouTube, where you can get the video version of most shows. If that's where you listen to us, please make sure to click like and subscribe so that you're notified with every new release. Take a minute and check out the Uncomfortable link tree. That's the single best place where you can find anything and everything uncomfortable all in one spot. All of my Uncomfortable episodes, any of the other podcasts that I've had the pleasure of being a guest on, and any of the documentaries that I have been featured in. We will, at some point, not too far off, address my absence for the past several months. I can assure you everything is fine. I just needed some time off, but we will get that dissected in another episode coming up. So, got a great guest for you tonight. Again, like I said, out of Southern Ohio. So if you're ready, let's get into this. All right, so tonight's guest, Joe, is coming to us from deep within the Wayne National Forest, somewhere tucked away in between Athens and Hocking down there in Southern Ohio. Joe, thank you for being with us tonight. I appreciate you reaching out. It's my understanding that you have had some significant experiences in the woods in and around the area that I just described.
Hey, Eric. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And yes, sir. Definitely right where I'm at, actually. I've came back to the scene of the crime, so to speak, for a couple of these experiences here, and that's where we're going to shoot it from.
Well, I apologize to the listeners. I know typically you guys are used to having some video along with this, but the fact that he is stuck out there in the middle of the forest, we decided we'll just go with the audio on this because he felt it was the right thing to do for the topic that we're going to be discussing tonight. So I applaud you for that. I don't know that I would be sitting out there alone in the same situation that I had one of these experiences, but kudos to you for doing that.
I've been called crazy.
Interestingly enough, I want to give a plug to my friend Scott Tompkins with the Bigfoot Mapping Project. Joe was nice enough to provide me the GPS coordinates of his experiences. And when you put those into the Bigfoot Mapping Project, which is a very handy app that you can get on your phone. I don't remember how much it is. It's nominal in price. But then you can also utilize the web-based browser for the Bigfoot Mapping Project as well. And that gives you a lot of control over a bunch of different overlays, and you can toggle through a bunch of different map layers, and you can really narrow down specific areas. And prior to starting the recording, I was telling Joe that in that area that he's in, there are 14 sightings since 2020. So those are all very recent. There's 14 of those. There's 23 reports that have been turned into the BFRO for that area. Additionally, there are 7 accounts that come from the database of John Green, the now deceased John Green, who was a big part of, I believe you'd say it was the 4 horsemen of Bigfoot research. He was out of British Columbia, and he compiled over 3,000 different sightings and track reports prior to his death in 2016. So there are a significant amount of reports in and around the area that he is currently sitting in. So it's not just a one-off. It's not out in the middle of nowhere that nobody's ever had a sighting before. These are pretty prevalent there.
Yeah, there's just being Appalachia around here, it's not hard to find stories from one holler to the next. It's, there's a lot they could hide in these rugged hills out there. Most people don't, when they think of Ohio, they really don't think of what we have here. I would liken it more to maybe the foothills in West Virginia, just prior to the actual Appalachian Mountains, than the flatlands of Columbus and north.
Because we're talking very far south in the state of Ohio, almost about the middle of the state, but very, very far south. Yeah,
and culture-wise and everything, it's just we're more like West Virginia or Kentucky here than we are the rest of the state. Just because, and then to get back to the terrain, it's rugged. A lot of coal mining went on here, and a lot of places for something to hang out and stay out of view if it chose to do so.
Well, that's a thing that's amazing to me when you run into that person who says, "Oh, humanity's everywhere, and there's no place left for anybody to hide like that." It's like, my God, man. You just I'm very familiar with Michigan and Indiana, and Michigan in particular. My Lord, when you start getting up past the middle of the state, once you start getting above Grand Rapids, the amount of forested area is just remarkable. And then you get up into the upper part of the lower peninsula, and even when you cross over the bridge, it's even more so. And the upper peninsula, it's ridiculous to think that something could not hide and stay out of our sight. It's just,
especially if that's what its whole profession is hiding and camouflaging.
So let's get into your experiences. I asked you to jot down some bullet points and just to kind of keep you on track. So when and what was your first experience?
So it would have been January, and I want to say it was 2016. So maybe January 2016, possibly 2017. But I'm pretty sure January 2016. So it was the last year that we had a notable snowfall, as in, in excess of 12 inches. And at the time I'd worked for a local tow company. And on that day I was buddied up with somebody else, and that was more or less our job, was to cruise into these back roads around here and answer them calls for help and help people get their Prius drug back up onto the road and all of that. So me and the guy I was riding with, we was heading out the road, just creeping, obviously, because the snow depth, I'd estimate 14 to 16 inches out in that area at the time. So we was just creeping, and there's a power line cut to the right, and it's a large cut, and I would estimate 100 to 150 yard swath of the woods leveled there. Just, one of them bare spots where power lines go through.
Yeah.
And Kenny, he noticed at first, he said, "Look, there's somebody sleigh riding over there." And looked over there, and there was something there. And so we're kind of gawking at that. And I look back over at Kenny. They obviously are not sleigh riding. I looked at Kenny. I said, "Kenny, I don't think they're sleigh riding." And he's like, "I don't think they are either." And I looked back again, and I said, "Kenny, I don't think that's a person." And he said, "I don't think it is either." And that was the last he would talk about this.
So I want to jump in here real quick. I mean, I get a very distinct image in my head when you say sleigh riding, like kind of gliding across the top,
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, go into that. What made you guys initially think it was somebody on a sleigh ride?
So at first, because just like you mentioned, it was such a smooth, I don't know, it was just going across the ground so smoothly. And then just obviously with the snow on and everything, and, just normal to see a kid out sleigh riding or whatnot, even in a crazy spot like that. But it was, upon second glance, it was certainly not somebody sleigh riding. It was definitely not a kid. I'm not going to, it was too far away from me to be able to say if it was brown or black. I'll say it was dark.
Can you take a guess about how far away you think it was?
I'd say when we seen it, we was looking at it from probably about 300 yards.
Okay. Yeah.
So it was pretty
good distance.
Yeah. So it's a hillside, and it's a pretty steep hill, really steep hill actually. And it was probably about maybe half to 3/4 of the way up that hillside, going more or less directly across from left to right, but kind of coming down the slope a little bit.
Okay.
And it was covering ground. That's what caught my attention at first, was the fact that, one, that it was a sleigh ride and it wasn't going straight down the hill. And two, the speed at which it was covering this area, which was very impressive. I would say that it cleared that cut certainly in under 15 seconds.
Wow.
And to me, it looked like if Shaquille O'Neal was to have hair. And again, I can't say if it was more fur or brushy or anything. I can just say it was hair. But if he were to have that and just was to go out and walk along that hill.
Yeah.
But upon later, once the snow melted, I went and I looked at that spot. And the kicker to it even further is that it was not just mowed lawn there. That's bare minimum maintained, pretty rough country.
Okay.
And that, whatever it was going through like nasty briars. I mean, and a lot of them. On me, them briars was chest deep.
So
which granted, there was a heavy snow, so everything was probably packed down a little bit and everything, but still, like, it was going through some nasty multiflora brush.
And you indicated that your partner that you were working with, you said that was literally the last time he would talk about this?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll be in front of our kids or something every now and then because he lives pretty close by, and I'll bring it up. It makes him uncomfortable, but he'll just, look down at the ground and nod his head in agreement. He didn't handle that well for some reason.
You've never, like, even the day of, he never really.
No, he didn't want to talk about it anymore from that moment on. That was he did not want to talk about it, which was so strange to me because for me it was all I could think about.
Right. And it's amazing how people's reactions are so different.
For me, I had to figure out because like that rocked my world. Because prior to that, I probably would have argued against the existence of Bigfoot for the same lame reasons that we're given every day to this day. I certainly didn't believe in it at that point up until that moment, but for me,
Was it even on your radar? Was it even something that you had ever entertained or knew
no,
much
sir.
about?
Nah, I had no time for that, man. No. Not at all. Like, I would have talked to you about ghosts and stuff like that, but, talking about a Bigfoot, I'm like, nah, that's crazy. That changed that day.
Interesting. I'd love to know, his thoughts on what he saw.
I wish he would tell it. I wish he would, but the best I can get out of him is just kind of a grin and look at the ground.
All right, so let's move on to the next.
So after that happened, like obviously I was out in the woods a lot. Like I'm an avid hiker, avid fisherman, kayaker, camper, backpacker. I mountain bike. I do it all.
Okay.
So I'm out in the woods a lot, and I feel like when I seen that, and like I said, that rocked my world. But there was no arguing what me and him both seen. So you move forth with that, and when you go into the woods after that, it's kind of on your mind a little bit, just as it would be if you knew there was mountain lions or bears or whatever.
For sure.
As it should be, you should worry about that when you go out into the woods. So I think I became more hyper aware at that point, paying attention to stuff, noises, smells, things that just didn't make sense as far as, trees being moved around or whatnot.
Yeah.
Just, physics and common sense sometimes just some things that don't make sense to it. So my next, I guess, I don't know if I'd call it an encounter because I didn't encounter the Bigfoot itself, but I came across the footprints. So it was, heck, it might have been the spring of the year following when we seen that. I was out walking a Stroud's Run on the north side. And I was just, out enjoying a hike, and the trail was quite like that thick, nasty mud that just sticks to you and you can't even sling it off.
Yep.
And so just walking and trying to traverse through that and not fall into the lake. And I almost fell face first into the track. And I caught myself and then you've seen the pictures, and this would be the one that, we can't quite place as to what it might be, but that was the next thing that I encountered there.
Are you talking about the one that looks like it might have protruding nails at the tip?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's the one there, and I followed it so it came out of the woods, and I as soon as I seen that, I had to get back and follow exactly to where it came out of the woods, and I followed it to where it went into the woods. And I probably followed it for maybe 50 to 70 yards where it went into the woods. I certainly wasn't trying to follow whatever that was into the woods. So I stopped there with that.
And I'll
went on home.
I'll put the pictures that you've provided of the tracks along with my social media. And so we started talking about this in a prior conversation. Like when a track looks like a human print, I immediately have to kind of not necessarily throw it out, but I do have to put it into the category of it could be a person. Because like many of the legitimate tracks that I feel are legitimate that I've seen, they tend to be more of a flat-footed, with no real visible arch. And a couple of those that you provided me had a very aggressive arch. To be honest, I've only seen that in one other instance, and that's my son, who is 6'5" and has the most ridiculous time trying to find shoes that don't hurt his feet, because he has this remarkably high arch. If he were to get his foot wet and step on the cement, you would see the pad with his toes, and then a very small line that would come all the way down to finally connect to a print of the heel. So not like 2/3 of his foot doesn't touch the ground when he steps. So that was remarkable to me, in that muddy substrate, there still was that very definite large arch. Now, I'm not saying that it couldn't be, because there are wildly different descriptions of these things. But primarily, like, some of the prints that seem to be touted as being quantifiable and legitimate by experts in the field, let's call them that, they tend to be more flat-footed pads. Now, the first couple that you sent me were very much flat-footed looking feet. And even that thing that had the apparent nails or claws at the tip of the toes primarily looked flat-footed. But you had indicated that the majority of those pictures had all been taken in very early, what did you say, early March?
Where it was early spring.
You wouldn't typically find somebody walking barefooted in a wet, cold mud. So that doesn't really make sense.
And it's got that multiflora mixed in with it too. There, laying across the trail and whatnot. That it'd be miserable walking out through there barefooted. And it was cold, and I know it was cold, and I know it was early spring, because there wasn't any flowers growing on anything yet.
So you followed these tracks from where they came out of the woods along the edge of the lake, and where did they terminate? Where did you stop?
So there's all right, so they would have come off from the left side. When I was heading out this trail, they'd come off from the left side, because the right side's the lake. So they'd come off from the left side, and they'd walk 75, at most 100 yards. And where it went back into the woods at is where, like, kind of like a deep little cut valley drops down into the lake. Mm-hmm. And it makes you go walk up over the hill to be able to go up, and clear this and come back down on the other side. And then right in there, it went in at the angle kind of back towards the direction it came.
Now, I noticed in some of the pictures that you provided, especially the one that we're talking about with the apparent nails or claws at the tip of the toes, there's another track that stepped right over it, literally on top of it. And I've noticed in some of the other pictures that you have tracks going a multitude of different ways.
Oh, there's sometimes that I got to make sure I sent you the one picture where there was different sizes. There was one that it looked like a child's foot.
Which is
very sure I sent you that.
Very interesting to me, because I'm not aware of at least seeing photographs of an area that would have the amount of traffic that was apparent in those pictures that you had sent me. That if those are real, and believe me, I'm not questioning you, but I'm saying if those are real, then that's a heavily traveled corridor.
Right. And there is some power line cuts and a lot of gas line cuts in that area, new gas line cuts actually. So there's a lot of room for something to be able to, navigate out through there.
Very interesting.
And it's rough. Like that Stroud's Run area, it's particularly a rough area. Just as far as, there's sheer cliffs and steepness back in there that, where I'm at right now, for instance, isn't quite like that.
Right. And I'm going to go back again for a second to the Bigfoot mapping project. Like when you look at this area before you zoom in, if you've got the Ohio, state of Ohio pulled up on this map and you haven't zoomed in yet, there there's a weird overlay that shows indicates like a hot spots, and literally the area that you're talking about is glowing white hot with reports. As I said earlier in the show, 14, 23, 27, 7, and just.
You don't have to come down here. You have to come down and check it out, man.
It would definitely be an interesting area to go to. The pictures that you've sent me with the tracks going multiple ways, that is okay. Did you say this was around 2016, 2017, spring of 2017?
Yeah, them ones would probably be spring 2017, I'd say.
Okay, so do you frequent this area?
Not anymore. A new trail system opened up a lot closer to my house, which is kind of where I'm at right now. Okay. So I moved by 5 miles, changed the area that I frequent. So I go out there and kayak a lot. I kayak at night out there a lot, just, go poke around for catfish and enjoy an evening. But as far as trailing, I really don't.
I guess I was getting to the point where I was going to ask, is it still an active place?
I would assume so. I can't say that I've heard of any. Like I said, since I'm not in that area so much anymore, I can't say that I've seen anything or heard anything. But the entire time that I was there and was frequenting it, then my dad actually lived close to that at one point on the other side of the lake. Yeah, and I mean it wasn't any different on the other side than it was on that side. I'd imagine that they're still there, because the type of crowd that frequents this state park generally is the type that's going to stick to their trails. They're not going to risk getting lost. They're not true, outdoorsy type people. They're out there, and for a lot of them, that's like the most outdoor adventurous type thing that they've done is went for a hike out there.
Okay, I got you. I wasn't quite sure where you were going with that.
yeah. So it just I don't Snowflake. It's college town. Okay. So the majority of the population is college students. So they're not out mushroom hunting. They're not out flipping logs over and stuff. They're just out on their trail with their mountain bike, earplugs in. So they probably don't experience a whole lot there. And I don't know. I feel like people probably miss a lot of opportunity out there just by creature comforts.
Yeah.
I'd assume they're still there. It's interesting.
It is, because if that amount of traffic is still going on in that area, that would be that would provide a plethora of track casting.
Yeah, I think that if you went out and you could spend a couple of days, I think you'd probably be able to find you something pretty easily. Well, right now we're in a drought, so footprinting it's not going to be the greatest. But and to touch on that spot in particular again, it'd be on that side of the lake. There's this place. Oh, it's like a Native American campground, but you got to hike up and you go up a big hill to get there. I mean, you got to really be dedicated to get to the top of this hill, and there's a trail up top. I want to call it White Oak or something like that. Okay. But once you get up there, there's a Native American. I don't know if it's a burial ground or I'm not. That's not my topic, so I can't say what it is. But it is Native American celebratory or something up there. And they just once you get up there, you can feel it in the air. There's just something a little bit different up there. And after our conversation the other day about indigenous people and the similarities to some of these, that kind of just clicked right there, that maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe there's something special to what that place actually is. I don't know. Just a thought right there. But
yeah, so, there are especially, I mean, obviously photographic evidence is hard to come by, but some of the people who have had legitimate artists draw a rendering of what it was they saw, sketch or similar to what law enforcement uses to compile a drawing of an assailant or a criminal. There is with some reports, there is a very strong affinity for First Nations people, very, very Native American features, high cheekbones. I don't know. It's interesting though.
Yeah, that was just a thought, as to why maybe that might be such a hot spot. I was just trying to think of what would be unique about that area other than, the deep cuts and the landscape and whatnot. But
yeah. Are there any Indian burial mounds near you, near that area?
Oh man, there's stuff all over the place here. There was the Adena Indians, and there's mounds all over the place, and in the woods, like you'll see hills that is just too perfect
yeah.
of a hill, and a lot of times I think it's safe to make the assumption that that's probably one of their mounds.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, there's a lot.
All right, so where do we go from here?
So, same spot. I want to say same spot. Parking lot that I parked at for the footprint. So, but this is 2020, February 6th, 2020. Would have been right before my birthday. So I was doing some DoorDash there and was dealing with a cold. Turned out I was COVID. So I went and I was craving something spicy. So I went and I got me some KFC and I went out to this beach and I sat there and I was just going to sit there and enjoy my spicy food. And first, the realization I had is that I could not taste the spicy food, and I couldn't tell the difference between the spicy chicken and the mashed potatoes. And I was getting kind of depressed about that. And I'm looking across the lake. So basically, everywhere else I just described to you would be at my back or to my left shoulder, looking across the lake now. And there's a fog, a strange fog. And if you look at the I'll send you the picture. I didn't think I sent that to you, but it was a very strange fog. It was like it hung out about 15 feet above the lake. Like you could see underneath the fog, but it was there, and if you was above it, you could see it.
Okay.
And so the trees were very foggy, so you could kind of see the bottom of the trees, but not much of else. And I'm just sitting there looking across the lake, and I hear one tree go down, and I didn't think nothing of the one tree. But then I heard the second tree go down, and then I heard the third tree go down, and the fourth, and then a fifth. All these trees.
Literally a full tree being
Yeah.
dropped.
Yeah. Just one right after another. And then I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So I sat there and nothing else happened. I didn't hear no more noises other than that, but it did. And it wasn't like, you could tell it wasn't right next to each other. There was, I thought at first like maybe one tree took all the trees down, and that wasn't the case at all. It was something over there pushed 5 trees over.
Jesus.
And like I said, that happened. There was a very strange fog on there, and I'll have to send you a picture of the fog. Maybe you can attach that so people know what
Sure.
I'm talking about. It just, weird setup there. So yeah, so then I dealt with that. And so that was 2020. And then later on 2020, we'll call this, I want to say, late April or early May 2020. We're at where I'm at right now. And I refer to this as Ashley and Evans camp. So we're at Ashley and Evans camp, and it's me and my sister and her sister's kids and boyfriend, and then my sister's friends, boyfriend and kids, and then my kids. So we're all here hanging out at this spot, and nothing really happened the whole time that we're all here. So the intentions is everybody, and my dad was there, and the intentions is that me and my dad and my kids are staying after the camp. So everyone's here. We're just kind of having like a little family get together, cook out by the campfire, and then we're all going to camp afterwards. And they're getting ready to leave, and we're out here saying our goodbyes and everything. And there's always owls here,
Okay.
which is pretty cool. I love owls. But so an owl started making noise that didn't quite sound right.
It's amazing how often this comes up.
Man, this one, the first one had like a rasp to it. That's the only way I can describe it. Kind of had a rasp, and it had a boom that normal owl doesn't have. Normal owl doesn't just carry like this. So it made its noise. And then another one made the noise further down into the valley. So the first one was up the top of the valley, and then the other owl was down towards the lower half of the valley. And it went off. And then we heard, I don't know if it's what you people would call a tree knock, or if a tree actually broke, like a small tree, just something snapped it. But that happened, and then that got everybody's attention. And we're sitting there listening. And the owls continued, and there was one owl that had the rasp, and then the other owl had a roll to it, almost like if the way I describe it, like if a French person tried to do the owl, and I just added like a French roll to the end of it, just a little bit off. And if you're out in the woods enough, you know what you can tell when an owl is an owl, or if an owl might not be an owl. So and then once the stick broke or whatever happened, I kind of had everybody on edge, and my sister and her friend and their families kind of showed it off and left, and it was me and my dad and my kids, and we hung out. I've already had my experiences at this point, so it's something me and Dad talk about. I think, heck, we might even been listening to Sasquatch Chronicles by now. So we're just kind of soaking it in, more or less, and things quieted down. That night, didn't really hear much, but probably about, I want to say around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and had to go out and use the bathroom. So, they were all in a tent, and I was sleeping in my hammock. Oh, that was weird.
What's that?
This leaves moving around, got my attention there. So I wake up to use the bathroom. I get out of my hammock, and I'm sitting there, and I hear down to the right of me. Let me roll my window up real quick. So
just a reminder, if anybody's joined us late and didn't hear the beginning of the episode, Joe is actually on location at the point where some of these experiences have happened. So
this one in particular, actually, I'm telling you about right now. Okay, I digress. So I get up to use the bathroom, and I'm just kind of sitting there in my hammock. I haven't got out. My feet's still on the ground, butt's in the hammock. And to my right, which would be down in this valley, which is essentially no man's land, all the way for probably 2 miles to the highway. If you're looking on the map, you can probably see what I was talking about. But it was deep down in there, and I hear what sounds like a woman and a man arguing, but you can't quite understand what they're saying. You could tell that one was arguing with the other.
Mm-hmm.
And that carried on for a while, and then then that quit, and then actual owls came back in.
Was the disagreement, the argument, was it loud enough that you could recognize that you didn't understand what was being said, or was it just muffled enough where you couldn't actually tell what was being said?
No, it was loud enough that I could tell that I didn't know what they were, or understand what they were saying.
Okay.
And it was just like I took out of it that whatever the male was had pissed the female off.
Go figure.
Right. And then I hear there was something slammed down there. I don't know what could have slammed. It almost sounded metallic, honestly, but
she was throwing kitchen pans.
That was a cast iron skillet to hit the tree.
Yeah, he probably walked by her at the sink and just left a glass sitting on the counter.
But yeah, so that's how it ended, was that slam. And then after that, it was just crickets down in there. And like I said, the actual owls came back, and they were hooting and whatnot, hanging out. And I nothing really else happened that night. It kind of all went quiet. And woke up, and I told my dad about it and all that. And then, so from that, we'd go to. I start working, and remember, this is the spot I refer to as actually an Evans campsite.
Okay.
So, and then after that, my interest is burning like a wildfire for it at this point. So I'm, trying to soak things up. I'm listening to stuff. I'm using COVID checks to buy camping equipment and Jeff Meldrum books and Devolution. Have you?
Yeah.
Not to get off the topic.
Yeah.
Have you read that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, what a book!
For a fictional account, that's a great book.
Yes, it is. It's a good one. So, all right, sorry about that. But so anyhow, like I'm searching for jobs with coming into summer, something that I want to be outside, and I come across this job that is working for Forest Service / a university, and what they do is studies on recreational traffic in certain areas of certain national forests, and they do this once every 4 years. So it's a temporary job, but I was thrilled. So I'm going to be paid to be out in the national forest now. Mm-hmm. And part of my assignment would have been going to southern Ohio for the farthest reaches of Wayne National. There's like 3 regions of Wayne National Forest, and it sprawls over quite the area. And so I'm in the southern, this is the southern down to Lake Vesuvius. And since I'm traveling so far, I'm just going to camp down there. And so I do my job where my assignment was on the site. And it so happened there was a lady that owned a horse farm there. And she asked where I was planning on going for the night and all that. And I told her I was camping and where I intended to camp. And she refused to let me do that. And bless this lady's heart, it was so awesome what she done for me. But to the point, she was so adamant that I couldn't sleep outside on that location that they gave me a free cabin there to stay on their property for that time. So I took them up on that. And that was, I can't say that I had anything happen while I was at Lake Vesuvius, but, I thought that was strange that she was so adamant that I wasn't, able to sleep outside. And upon, obviously I went home at that point and I had to research the area, and there was some stuff that occurred down there. Actually, they named that area in particular. I don't think it was a Sasquatch Chronicles episode, but some podcast, they named that horse camp. So after that, what would have happened is, and the next 2 experiences would happen with me, my sister, and her boyfriend together. So there's a place that's called Moonville that is notoriously spooky in the area to begin with. It's definitely somewhere worth looking up into the history and whatnot. Moonville, Ohio. It's a ghost town, but it's somewhere that people will go out and hang out, and there's no cell phone service. And it's the most isolated, least populated area in the state of Ohio.
Okay.
So we're out there and just kind of, trying to spook ourselves, I suppose. Are we going to see the guy with the lantern at the tunnel and all that? But we're pulled off the road. I can't remember what for. I can't remember if my sister had to use the bathroom or something, but we're pulled off the side of the road there. And my sister could kill me for this. But so she's using the bathroom, and I made like a whoop or a howl or something, and it freaked her out. But something made a noise in the woods. It responded back to it. Mind you, this was lightheartedly. Like, I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to whoop for a Sasquatch. This was just like, I'm going to scare the shit out of my sister, and done that.
Yeah.
And something answered on top of the hill with a howl. And come to find out after researching, I came across what is known as the Ohio howl, and pretty much sound like that to a T. So
Did it really?
First, it sounded to me, as a firefighter, it sounded like an old school air raid type siren that firehouses have on top of it. Just one of them.
Yeah.
It wasn't sharp. It was just like more like a moan howl. And then that happened, and then we sat there and just kind of soaked that in, like, holy shit, did that really just happen? And then something started down over that hillside in a hurry after us. I mean, it was busting down. And my brother-in-law, he's a big boy. He's on the other side.
Coming at you. Coming
down the hill, and then here he come because he had to get in the back seat behind me as the driver, and he come around that, and I'm like, do we really need to leave? And he looked at me, and the look was just pure fear. He said, we got to go. Like, he had a better hearing of it than I did on the other side of the car there. But yeah, it was something and it was knocking trees and shit over coming down over the hill. Like, it was, I don't know if it was I don't even know what I could say would cause that, honestly. A bear's not going to bust through like that and knock trees and stuff down. It wasn't the time of year for bucks to be having big racks. It was early in the spring, so deer shouldn't even have had racks for a deer to go to bust through, stuff like that. So, yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, Moonville, Ohio, September 24th, 2023, 4:45 a.m., there is a pretty significant report.
Wow. I need to get this app.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's like it's like a pocket buddy, I mean, it's on your phone. You can access it immediately. If you're planning on going to a specific place, going camping, whatever, you can put in the coordinates or the town that you're going to, and it literally will pull up anything you need to know.
Yeah, that's really cool. And about that place, like if you're ever to find yourself there or whatever, before you're getting ready to go across into, you got to go across a bridge to get to the tunnel. And before you go across that bridge, if you look to the left of the tunnel up on the hill, there's a patch of pine trees that just sticks out like a sore thumb. And not to get off topic, and I know we're not talking about gut feelings or anything like that, but every time I've been there, my eyes are drawn to that patch of pine. I don't know why, but maybe my gut's telling me there's something up in there. My gut's warned me about this stuff before, so maybe that's what it is.
Maybe.
But yeah, for anyone that listening that might be able to go there, and so just giving them kind of an idea of where I think stuff might be happening there. That patch of pines definitely just sticks out for some reason.
How close is this tunnel to Lake Hope?
Oh, I mean, you can make the argument it is Lake Hope area.
Okay.
It's right there. Yeah. Pretty awesome place. I can't say that I've spent a whole lot of time out there outside of the Moonville area. That's really the only time that I've spent in that state park. I guess I've been at State Forest where Moonville is, but State Park's just right there next to it. But, yeah, so moving on, speaking of state parks, so, and again, it's me, my sister, and her boyfriend. This is probably maybe 2 or 3 months later. We're getting maybe July-ish, somewhere around in there. We went to Burr Oak, and I believe it's Dock 3 is where we was at. Either Dock 2 or Dock 4 or Dock 3 at Burr Oak. But, so we're there just hanging out. I was actually fishing, doing some night fishing for catfish and whatnot, and they were just tagging along. And we just sitting there, and then again, this is the furthest thing from our minds. And my sister goes, "What is that smell?" And then it hit me, and it smelled like straight, if somebody hit the sewer line, that's what I was smelling. Just straight, nasty, raw shit. And we're just sitting there kind of trying to wrap our minds around. I was like, well, where in the hell would that smell be coming from? And as we're doing that, I seen the acorn. My eyes shot to the acorn immediately, and I watched so there's a trail that runs up behind where we're fishing at. So my back's to a trail, and the trail is probably 20 yards behind me, and it goes across the hillside. And from that area, I watched the acorn, and I seen the straight trajectory, and it came right out of the woods and landed right in between me and my sister's boyfriend's feet. And I mean, dude, I seen everything but leave the fingers. I can't say that I seen the fingers, but I seen the straight trajectory and everything, the exact area where it came from, and dude, it landed right in between me and his boots.
Isn't that crazy how your eye picked that up?
Right, yeah. Like, it just immediately. Like, it was so that might have been one of the strangest events, honestly, because I know. there's a nut will fall straight down.
Yep.
And it would have took 100-mile-an-hour wind to blow that thing the way this thing came out of the woods.
Another very common experience. People having things thrown at them. Yeah, usually people say they're small stones or pebbles, small rocks. But a lot of times these are happening in the evening and night, and I'm sure acorns are probably every bit as useful to them as small rocks are.
Oh, for sure, especially on getting attention. It turns out. So yeah, and nothing else happened that night. I can't say that we heard any more or seen any more. Just the smell, and then that acorn that I know physics and something that came out of something's hand for sure.
So the smell. Let's get back to the smell.
Yeah.
Did it linger? Was it initial?
It came with the wind.
Oh my God, what is that? And then it went away, or?
It just come with the wind. Like if a wind came in from the direction that the acorn came from, that's when we'd smell it. And this was before the acorn. I mean, and it's, I'm not talking like we smelled that and then the acorn happened 30 seconds later. It was probably close to an hour and a half later.
Okay, so it was a prolonged.
Yep. The smell would come and go. It wasn't persistent.
Yeah.
But we only smelled it when the wind would blow out of that area. So do with that what you will, but that's how that was. And like I said, nothing else. The rest of the night was uneventful. Didn't even catch no fish. Then I'm not sure this is chronological order, but I thought of it as we was talking about things being thrown. So straight across the lake from where this happened. And we're talking Burr Oak Lake. We're at Burr Oak now. So that last experience and then this one now. We're at Burr Oak. So this was between Dock 2 and the beach where the picnic table is set at for people that might know that area. I was there fishing one night. And this had been before I got my kayaks. I was on the bank fishing right there at that picnic table. And I had ate, and a cat uncommon was hanging out, and I gave this cat some scraps. I assumed it was a homeless cat, so I cooked it up a little bit. And then a pontoon come in, and I remember it pissed me off because, this dude's got the whole lake to fish, and he comes and he sets 50 yards off the bank right where he's probably setting over top where I'm casted at. So I'm sitting there kind of stewing as it is. This guy's just there. And what hit the water? I'm not going to make any assumptions, but so right in between, it was probably laying I'd say it real close to this dude's pontoon boat, whatever it was. And it had a splash. And the guy, he yelled over at me. He's like, "Was that you?" And I yelled over at him. I was like, "No, that was not me." Because I think he was pissed. I think he thought I sent one right there next to his boat. And I was thinking about it, but I didn't do that.
my uncle Dave, he is world renowned for doing that shit. Somebody comes in too close on his boat, and he'll take that lure off, and he'll tie on a heavy sinker, and he'll just whip that son of a bitch till it hits the side of his boat and donk.
Oops, sorry about that.
Yeah,
Probably shouldn't have parked so close. Well, I was almost there. I was fishing with 3-ounce sinkers. I probably would have put a hole in that thing. But to get back to that story, so I'm sitting there that was weird, and then that cat never came back.
No.
I'll just stop right there with that. But that cat never did come back after any more pizza. I had more pizza to share with this cat. It never came back for pizza. After what? I don't know. You're scared it and then threw.
You're not saying you think that splash was the cat, do you?
Man, I don't know. When I was sitting there in the moment, yeah, I was sitting there thinking something just launched that cat out of the water.
Jesus.
But it never came back. And when I say it never came back, I mean it. I spent a lot of time at that lake I mean, a lot of time in that spot in that time frame, and I never seen that cat again. Period.
I'll be damned.
So maybe cat just got scared away by the guy that was up there and launched something that I'd have estimated at least 5 pounds that hit the water.
Jeez.
I don't know, but never seen that cat again out there. And so I told you about seeing the lights.
Yeah, go into that.
And so where I'm talking about seeing where I would have been looking across. So to describe it, it'd be between the Burr Oak Lodge and Dock 2 in the wooded area there is where a lot of times you'll see the lights that'll race through the area. Also, you see them in the Stroud-Drona area too, where I was the previous location, and that actually both state parks you can see these things if you just pay attention. You got to be out there at night, and let your eyes adjust, of course. But once your eyes have adjusted to the dark, you'll see these things. And the only way I can describe it is if it's like they go ripping through the woods. I mean, fast. Like if it was like on a quiet dirt bike and just a perfect ball of light just ripping through the woods like that. Because when it's not like you can see how it illuminates the trees as it goes in between them.
Yeah.
It's not like something shining into the trees. It's its own light.
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. I haven't seen it in conjunction with anything to do with Bigfoot, but I have seen him twice while investigating paranormal activity in a graveyard.
Well, I mean, and there's a lot of native history in this area too, so maybe something along spiritual like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, they definitely emanate light, and it's a pretty common thing. And the first time we noticed them would have been at Stroud-Drona. My dad had noticed this stuff, and I thought he was crazy at first, but no, they're there. I had one on video a long time ago, but that's several phones ago, so I don't imagine I still got it. So yeah, them lights, and that's a common thing out there at Burr Oak, especially back. There's a place called Boater's Cove, I think is what it's called, or Boater's Swim Cove, or something like that. But back in that area, there's quite a few of them lights if you sit and watch.
Yeah, I'm looking at the.
There's never more than one or two at once. I mean, I'm not saying like there's a whole herd of these things moving through. Right. There's at most two.
I'm actually looking at the lake as we speak, and the further back you go, it gets pretty remote looking.
Oh yeah, man! It's my favorite. One of my favorite places in the world. It's the highest, best kept secret I think that lake is. So to go along with the light type thing, I had worked for the lodge out there. That was the greatest job I ever had. But
at Burr Oak?
Yeah. And so one night, I actually wasn't even working this night. I was out. I enjoyed the place so much. I'd go out there, when I was fishing or whatever, and just go visit everybody. And one night I stopped in. I was actually going to the gym because they let me have the gym membership there. So I went into the gym, and when I was in the gym, I watched two ladies go running out the door in a way that just, I don't know, caught my attention like they was in a haste. So I went out there to see what was up, and they were standing out in the front of the parking lot out front of the building looking up and saying that they had just seen how did they describe it? Like a giant burning one of them kites is what they said. Like one of them kites that are
I'm sorry.
Balloons.
Say it again. A giant burning what?
The balloons that they light, like the ceremonial balloons.
Oh, like the candlelit luminaries?
Yeah. They described it like that, but said it was massive and it made a noise as it went across. So that, and my buddy had also seen stuff in the sky out there. So I don't know if it's just where, it's extra dark out there and you can see more things moving around the sky, but.
Well, I think that's definitely, that definitely aids things when you've removed yourself from a significant amount of light pollution, especially on a clear night. And it is, I tell this story all the time. I used to go on a week-long fishing trip every year up into the upper western peninsula of Michigan above Wisconsin. And my God, man, it was like if you woke up in the middle of the night, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and had to take a piss, you didn't bother going to the bathroom. You walked outside because the stars they literally looked like they were close enough that you could, just pull them out of the sky. And we would sit there. You could see satellites going by. You could see other shit that was moving the way you wouldn't think something would be moving. Meteors. So yeah, anybody who has any interest in that kind of stuff, if you can get yourself to a dark sky park or someplace where there's not a lot of, and that's the problem, because like pretty much everywhere you go, unless you go off the beaten trail, if you go out of your way to find darkness, every town generates so much light pollution now that you just, even like the idea of being able to see the northern lights, this past year and on through next year, people are seeing the northern lights way further south than we ever have because of the strong solar storms that are going on. And God, what an absolute travesty to not be able to, for people not to be able to see that just because they live so close to a city that the light pollution is making it where you can't see them.
Oh man, there's a study. I know this is off a little bit, but I heard, I'm trying to remember who said this or whose podcast is, or it might have been a Rogan podcast, but they mentioned how like in urban areas, there's a substantial amount of kids like that don't see it, that are 13 years old and haven't even seen stars yet.
Yeah. Can you
that
imagine?
Blows my mind.
Can you imagine?
That's terrible. That's abuse.
Well, and that's a sign of the times as well, because even if, unfortunately, and I hate to say this because I'm not throwing shade at kids nowadays, but just the way society is, kids nowadays, when do they ever look up? If they're not looking at a screen in front of them, they're looking at a screen down in their hands. It's constant. So
it's a sad thing, man. We got the green time. They call it green time, man. It's so important for kids to get green time. I try to get mine out in these places every day, and boy, it makes a big difference. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I unfortunately, like whenever I tried to encourage that kind of stuff at the time that I was married, I just, she didn't like camping. She didn't like this. She didn't like that. If it didn't have a blow dryer and toilet paper, then, she wasn't doing it. And, and my kids are, 27 and 28 now. They missed out on a lot of stuff because, one part of the family was not too into, he didn't like bugs, didn't like this, didn't like eating food that wasn't out of a refrigerator. And it's like, Jesus Christ, could you get any more excuses? So
I understand.
it's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's the way my kid's mom is. Actually, she does not enjoy that stuff, and it's burdensome sometimes to take them all out by myself. But man, I think it's paying off.
I do have to say I'm thankful they both grew up with a love of music that they got from me. My daughter is more into camping than my son, but my son his interests follow mine. So all of the weird stuff, all of the fringe topics, I've got a buddy as far as being able to talk about those kind of things. And in fact, a couple of falls ago now, he and a friend of his, they went to the Huron-Manistee National Forest in Michigan, and they rented an A-frame for a weekend, and they had some experiences there while they were in the A-frame. Something hit the side of the A-frame very hard. Knocked shit loose on the wall, and he called me, and the signal there is not great. So he called me at about 8:00, And essentially, I think the conversation kind of went, "Hey, bud, everything all right?" Because I knew he was gone for the weekend, and I thought, "Oh shit, something happened, car broke down or whatever." And he said, "Yeah, we're okay, but morale is quickly going into the shitter." And I was like, "What? What do you mean?"
No.
and the girl he was with, I mean, I'm like, did she start an argument, or I didn't know what the hell was going on. And he says, really, really pretty positive that we're seeing eye shine just above one of the lower branches of a tree across the street. And I said, "Really?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "Either two one-eyed raccoons that are sitting like 2 feet apart, or it's one thing that's got a really wide head." And I was like, "Well, shit." And we kept talking, and the light on the porch would flicker. It would kick on and it would kick off. But the thing of it was, it wasn't a motion light. And every time the light would come on, he would say, "Oh, the light's on again." And then we would lose connection.
Whoa.
We would drop the call. Dude, I'm telling you, this went on for hours. It was, as soon as he said, "Shit, light came back on," immediately drop the call. So there was some really strange stuff going on.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that adds a whole other element to it there.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to get you off topic, but that reminded me of it.
Oh, man, that was good stuff. So I touched on the lights there. So now, again, I might be kind of losing chronological order a little bit on these next two. But let's say we'll call this 2022. So and so now we're back to where I am right now. I had decided that I wanted to go hammock camping, and this is after our experiences. And so I come up and I wasn't doing it to make some YouTube content actually. So I'd come up here and I was trying to film some outdoor stuff. I suck at YouTube, by the way. And so I was doing that, and I got everything set up, and I was sitting there. I was eating my Spam and white potatoes I'd fried over the fire, and I can't remember what exactly got my attention. I think I heard a stick break with maybe some football, and then got quiet real quick. I think I was actually on the phone with somebody, and then I hung up the phone and I started listening. And so where I'm at right now, so it's like a finger ridge that goes out. So to my left by 50 yards, I'm starting down into a steep valley. To my right for about 40 yards, I'll be starting down into a steep valley. And then out in front of me, maybe 60 yards, I start down into a steep valley. So I'm kind of raised up.
Okay.
With everything around me there.
Kind of on a saddle?
Yeah, saddle. There you go. Yep, saddle. So I'm sitting there, and what I realize I'm hearing is leaves rustling, and it'd go from my right side all the way around to my left side, and in quick order, like it was moving fast, and it kept doing it. So it's covering all that area in very, very little bit of time and making very, very little noise. And so it done this for probably, I'd say I listened to it for about 5 minutes, and then I started thinking about it's time to pack stuff up. I'm just starting to get that awkward feeling. Might be time to go. And then
describe that feeling.
Just like fear washing over the back of your head, kind of. Just almost like it felt like something pouring down the back from the back of your skull down your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Just that kind of, I guess that's fear washed over me. People say that. I guess that's what that feeling is. So I'm sitting there soaking that in. I feel like my heart stopped. I'm listening to everything, and then that fear washes over me. And then I start. At that point, I've decided I'm leaving. So I start slowly, because I don't want anything that's out there to think that I'm panicking. Although I am. I'm starting to panic a little bit, but I don't want it to know that. So I'm slowly and calmly putting everything up. I'll grab a bite of my food, because I know if some animal, eating shows signs that you're not afraid of it. So, I'm still grabbing my bites of food and stuffing everything into my hammock. And I've just got everything put in there. And so now it's just my hammock hanging there with all my stuff in it. And then there's a grunt. It was just a deep grunt. And I heard a pop. So a grunt, and then something stepped on a twig. And it didn't sound very far away down over the ridge, just a little piece. So I unhooked my hammock from the straps. I left the straps hanging there. I unhooked it, and I threw it over my back like a hobo and just got out of the woods as quick as I could to my Jimmy.
No
and
shit.
Then pedal to the metal for a little bit to get out of here after that. I tell everyone that knows me well enough that I don't want these things to think that it has anything over top of me fear-wise. Like, I don't want it to think that. So I try to, still come up here and poke around every now and then. But a lot of times I kind of get ran out. And, just like a few minutes ago, like, I might have been a squirrel moving around or something. I don't know. But
sure.
To me, like, I telling the story, like, yeah, it grabbed my attention, and so I rolled the window up. So this spot is like, now we've come to realize family-wide, my daughter, my dad, all of us, we've come to understand there's something going on up here. And so my buddy that we do a lot of not recently, but we do a lot of adventure stuff outside. We'd like to do the overlanding and whatnot. And we was trying to find a place to camp with our kids. And we're flash forwarding to last year now. So, we're trying to find a spot to camp with the kids, and we don't want to go somewhere that we've already went 100 times. But I feel like it was Labor Day weekend or Memorial Day weekend. So everywhere was full, even the spots out here that are primitive sites that aren't even technically a campsite like where I'm at. They had cars parked there. So we resorted to coming up here, and so we're at this spot once again. But I'm a lot more comfortable. If I got family with me here and buddies that can shoot, like, I'm a lot more comfortable. Yeah. So we're up here hanging out, and I actually went to bed really early that night. Nothing had happened. I called the owls in. My buddy calls me the owl man, because every time we're out camping, I got to call the owls in, and they'll come and they'll hang out and hoot back and forth, and it's just kind of a thing now. The owl man. So I got the owls wound up that night, and then me and the kids, I went tried to get them to go to bed, and I fell asleep with them. And Shay was sitting out there by himself at the campfire, and this dude, he don't like. I know he won't say it, but he didn't. Before this, he didn't believe anything I said about this stuff. And he wouldn't say that, but I've been there on that side before, so I get it.
Sure.
So, but he would never call me out on it or anything like that. But I know. But so he's out there by himself next to the fire, and so I'm asleep snoring, and he heard a man and a woman start a conversation down in the hills, and he said that he tried to wake me up. And all I said in a slumber was, just wait until the owls get here, or the owls are coming next, or something like that. And I said that I don't remember saying any of this, but this is, and he didn't know about this area, this spot. I didn't say nothing to him about that, because it was falling on deaf ears as far as I was concerned, telling him about it. So, you know what I mean? Yeah. So he says he hears that carrying on, and then he heard them start arguing. He said they started arguing again. And then he heard a noise, and then they shut up. And then he said the creepiest thing of all to him, though, was after that, the owls came back. So he had his own little experience out here, and, maybe he's a little more open to the subject now. He'll be listening to this podcast. I know he will be. But, so he had his own little experience. I didn't really experience anything that night other than just calling the owls in like I normally do. But so I'm going to say this next story I should have told you first, because it would chronologically have happened before. But I would say this is spring of that year. I got COVID, and I got it really bad. Like it caused the brain fog and all that stuff, and just this crazy weird feeling. And I only felt good, Eric, when I ran. Like when I was out and I went trail running. I don't know if it was, getting blood flowing back into the brain up there, what was going on, but I only felt good when I was running, like actively running. Like as soon as I stopped, I didn't feel good.
That is so strange, because a good buddy of mine, they had come back from Florida. He and his wife never tested positive, but she was on her deathbed, not literally, but she was laid up for a week and a half, couldn't get out of bed. He tested positive, and he said the same damn thing. He's like, if I sit around, I get to feeling pretty piss poor. But he was a triathlete, and he would go out for a 6-mile run, and he ran 6 miles every day while he had it, and he said it was the best he would feel.
Yeah, it felt amazing, man. Like, not only did you feel normal, but I felt almost high from it.
That's so strange.
And that's what got me through, man. I had some struggles with that. Like, I really did. Like, it was bothering me because I was getting the ear ringing and all that going on, and it was rough. And this was for months, man. But so I was out on a trail run, and in this section of the forest where I'm at, probably only 3 miles away, closer to the Bailey's mountain bike area, like the head of that. So I was down in there, and I'd been to the doctor, and so what they were trying to treat me for was an anxiety. And he told me that if I would start feeling like I'd have an anxiety attack, to hum out a song. So that's, I was feeling good going for my run, but I had to take a break. So I'm sitting there, and then I started feeling rough. So I started humming, and then, it calmed me down. I could feel my heart rate going down and everything. And then I'm just sitting there, kind of listening to the stream trickle by. And I hear something start humming the same thing back out to me from the thicket of the woods right there. And I had to sit there for a second and just soak it in. And then it hit me. And, dude, you want to talk about being scared. When I realized, like, I don't know what it was out there, but it was humming, like, and it kept doing it like it was on a loop. It just hummed it exactly to a T the way I hummed it. It took me a minute. Like, I was sitting there trying to understand what I was hearing. I'm like, wait, like, that's what I was just humming. Because it was just, I can't even say I was humming a song. It was just like a random, whatever was. You talked about being a music guy. I'm a music guy. So I was just humming some random tune out, and dude to a T hummed it right back out of the woods at me.
That's creepy as shit.
Oh, yeah. I took the emergency exit. Like, there's forest roads that run through here. Like, so where you ain't got to stick on the trail. Yeah, I took that thing, and I went straight out of the woods.
Yeah, I would not like that.
Yeah, so that was very, very strange. And that was, I had no footprints or nothing like that there, but whatever it was humming back at me.
Yeah, that would do it for me.
So that's outside of, this season, not so much, and not even last year, not so much, but I like bow hunting and just being out in the woods. I enjoy all that, and just, so I find myself out here all the time. And then, you'll hear things that this sounds like would only make sense that would be a piece of a wood striking a tree. I mean, there's a big difference between a squirrel dropping a nut and bouncing off of a hollow tree or something, and then something like smacking a tree. And if you sit out here, you'll hear that stuff, and you'll notice things out of place. And just, if you're out in the middle of the woods and you see a stack of rocks that's miles away from any trail, like, to me, that kind of something to that, maybe a little bit, but just little things like that. And I know it sounds like I have a lot of experiences or whatever, but I just feel like I'm more in tune with it, or more in tune with my surroundings, and maybe aware because, I'm a firefighter. So there's, stresses that come from that have lasting effects. Maybe I'm just on a, hyperactive defense. or something like that.
So, not to throw shade at anybody that's not a first responder or a trained observer. I mean, that's not the point of me saying this, but what I do enjoy about talking to somebody who is ex-military, firefighter, law enforcement, nurse, doctor, people that make a living under a lot of pressure, where they have to make cognizant, good decisions while being faced with a number of different things that are pushing on them that would easily create chaos in somebody who wasn't used to that. So I guess all that to say that, somebody like yourself being a first responder, you've been in situations before where either somebody's life hangs in the balance, or you got to put out a fire, or trying to get a family out of home, stuff like that. Decision making while under extreme duress, to me, when you hear somebody talk about the types of the type of experiences you've had, it tends to give me a little bit more of a grounded viewpoint of where you're coming from when you're talking about this, because there's some critical thinking that happens, right?
For sure. And that's not like, it just sticks with you. That just kind of becomes like your DNA. And what in the world is coming down the road at me right now? ATV. Yeah, it caught me off guard. See, just things like that,
All right. So
yeah,
we touched on something in our conversation previously, and you told me about something to do with your dad and an experience that he had. Were you ready to get to that yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's actually back there to the Stroud Run area. So this would have happened near the Stroud Run Dam near
what
US
is it?
50.
What's it called?
Stroud Run, STROUDSRUN. It's back to that hot spot, the original hot spot we was talking about with the muddy footprint. To the dam side. So he, back in, when he was a little younger, he used to go out and he'd like to hike it and bike it and everything. And he was coming back. He liked twilight, like most people do, I guess. He liked to be out there around twilight. And so he was coming back, trying to get out of the woods in time before it got too dark. And he got to the dam there. And so he was standing, so he's facing the lake to the left. And mind you, this is now second person, third person, or whatever. So I'll try to quote him to a T. But to his left, I'm trying to think. I think that's called Lakeview Trail. Would be to the left there. He looked down towards that trailhead, and there was something he estimated to be between 8 to 10 feet tall, standing. And he referenced the Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And he said that that's exactly what he seen there. And then he never went back. He never did go back after that. And that was way before I had any of my experiences. If I had to put a date on that, I'd put 2014, probably.
Okay.
Because that was prior to my daughter being born. So yeah, it was back in then. So yeah, he had that experience then. And that's back to the same. There's lights there. The light, now I'm starting to put some more stuff together here. The light is what, him seeing the Predator thing is what attracted me up there one night, just to see what I could see or hear. And that's where I seen the lights for the first time. So, not long after his Predator, Mirage, whatever you want to call it, experience.
Yeah.
Was the first time that I experienced lights up in there.
So do you know the story in detail enough that you could, what was he doing? What were the circumstances, time of day?
would say about, back then it would have been summertime for him to be out. I'd estimate 7 p.m. probably. So the sun just starting to touch the top of the hills. And he'd come through a crowd of turkeys that he said seemed aggressive of all things. The turkeys seemed aggressive. And then he was trying to get away from the turkeys, and then wound up, he got up on the dam and he was looking back towards to see if he could see the turkeys. And that's where he's seen the predator shape standing there. And that's all the shape. And he does. He says it looked like if you could do the predator thing with a Bigfoot, that's what he would say it looked like.
And how prone was he to talking about fantastical stuff?
He never talked about anything like that before. I mean, UFOs, that's always been a topic of discussion because once you see it up there, you got to keep looking, and that's always been a topic. But as far as anything along them lines like that, we'd never really had a conversation about that. Yeah, this is before any of us had really had any true outdoor type experiences, honestly.
Did he ever what did he leave that experience with?
Fear. He was scared. That was one of his favorite things to do was to take off and go out there and ride his bike or go walking.
Yeah.
And that was it for him. And it's sad looking back, 10 years later or so. It's really sad because it stopped him from doing what he enjoyed doing. See, I'm on the other hand, I'm the exact opposite. I ain't gonna let it stop me from doing what I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
It might run me out, but I'm gonna come give it a try anyhow.
Well, I would ask you this: if you have an opportunity, I don't know what kind of phone you have. Does it have a recording app on it where you can do voice messages or whatever?
I've got a S23. Yeah.
Okay. Would it be possible? I mean, if he'd be willing to, have him record that.
Yeah. I'm sure he'd love to do that.
And then send it to me or else let me get in touch with him.
Yeah. I'll see. He's got some voice issues. So it's kind of hard to understand him.
Mm.
It's not like language barrier or nothing. It just, he's got a really low raspy voice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, but yeah, we could find him a quiet spot in the house or something and have him sit and tell you what happened.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to put that in with this episode.
Okay, yeah. Well, maybe tomorrow morning I can get him to, just a few minutes of his time.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, if trying to set up a phone call between him and I is too much, then just if he wouldn't mind just recording and. Then you can send it to me and I'll edit it in with this.
All right. Yeah, we can do that.
Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, man. I appreciate you.
Oh, Eric, I've had a blast.
I appreciate you getting a hold of me and taking the time to do this.
Hey, I'm glad I took the time to do this. This is fun, and that's first time I've actually told anyone my story outside of just family and friends. And
yeah.
I don't even tell them much then.
it's just
you say to me it makes sense that someone would think I'm crazy for what I say. So it's like why even bother?
One thing I want to touch on before I let you go. You mentioned at one point, having guns with your camping group. I don't remember exactly which place, but with that in mind, with having hunted, whether it be shotgun, rifle, crossbow, compound bow, that initial figure that you saw, your first encounter that you saw with your buddy with the tow truck at 300 yards, would any of those weapons had made a difference?
A 12 gauge shotgun can cause a lot of damage with the right shell.
Yeah.
I know no 9mm is going to stop it. Wouldn't have stopped it. I know. I don't think AR or any of that would cause the damage. It would take. I mean, to get it stopped before it got to you. I mean, bleeding out's one thing. Like, you can blow a thing out and it'll bleed to death. It could still hurt you before that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, true stopping power to stop that thing in its tracks. I mean, I don't even know if a shotgun would. Don't get me wrong. If you get it where it needs to go, it's going to die. But whether or not it gets to you before it dies.
That significant of size.
Oh, yeah. Like, it was, I mean, it reminded me of Shaq. It was probably bigger than Shaq, broader than Shaq for sure. And just the way it was covering the distance across there, and man, its legs would have had to have been quite long to cover that, because it didn't look like it was running. It just, cruising. And it was covering ground, so it was a substantial size. I'd imagine it was at least 8 feet probably. If not bigger than that. I don't want to sound, blow it up too much, but it was a large creature.
That's interesting because, Shaq is imposing as hell at 7'2".
Right, yeah.
And I was just a couple of weekends ago with my girlfriend up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I posted some pictures on my Instagram of it. We were in it's called Mystery Town, which huge shout out to Mystery Town in Mackinac City. Because that guy, he runs a fantastic place. Super nice guy. Sent me a sweatshirt, and just a terrific guy. But in there they have a silhouette that is an 8-foot Bigfoot against the wall, and then it has increments of a foot, like almost like a tape measure on the wall. And I think it says something on it like, how do you measure up? And, I'm 5'9" if I can manage to stand up straight. And looking at the photograph that my girlfriend took of me standing at that silhouette that's 8 foot tall, it's insane.
It's massive, isn't it?
It's insane. And
yeah, I think it'd make it look. It make Shaq look thin.
Yeah. And my buddy Robert Kreider down there in New Mexico, he's been researching a clan of these in his research area, and he's got 23.5-inch prints. 23 and
wow.
a half.
Could you imagine?
And his estimates are, into the 9 and 10 foot height range.
The massive, think of the power that'd be behind something like that.
Just can't even imagine.
What's your thoughts on I know you're probably trying to get off here, but this is something that really interests me is Portlock, Alaska,
mm-hmm.
where the
sure.
The trees are drove down. Well, I guess that happens up and down the West Coast. What's your thoughts on that?
You're talking about the trees that have been shoved into the ground upside down with the roots up there?
Trees.
Yeah, very unusual. You mean...
could you imagine? I couldn't see an 8 or 10 foot, even as strong as we're talking right now, just to think of the mechanical leverage and the pressure and the weight that would be at the end of that to swing that thing up.
Well,
and then
going back to Robert Kreider, and I wish I could. I wish I had this memorized, and I don't. But there is an equation where you start with the average strength of a 6-foot adult human male, and then incrementally by a series of calculations, incrementally for every, I don't know if it's every six inches the increase in strength. And when you get past that 6 or 7 foot tall, the equation compounds like ridiculously. So I know he's got an area that he investigates. I believe it's called the kill zone and the lodge. And the kill zone is a narrow corridor of trees that have been picked up and placed. Huge trees, like you would not think that an upright something that walks on 2 feet would be able to move these trees, but they're able to. So, you know, that
the strength,
the strength is unreal. And, you know, and the other thing that really kind of confounds me is the people that say, like, when these things are trying to do intimidation by stomping and, you know, thunderous footsteps, the ground literally, you know, resonating with each step that they take. I was at a zoo this summer, and I was on the same ground level as this rhinoceros. There was obviously a paddock where this thing was enclosed, but the ground that I was standing on was the same ground that it was walking on. Now, this thing's larger than a Mini Cooper. It's larger than a Volkswagen Bug, you know, heavier than a car. And this thing walked past me within 5 foot, and I couldn't hear a thing. The ground didn't shake. It walked as softly as a squirrel.
Interesting.
And that it was at that point that it dawned on me, and it's like, so these people that say that they hear these thunderous footsteps and these, you know, just massive sounding things moving through the trees. I understand that if there is an act of intimidation to try to drive you out of the area, that they're going to try to be louder and appear or seem bigger than what they really are by making a lot of noise. But, you know, how does something the size of a rhinoceros walk past me virtually silent? Now, granted, he wasn't galloping. He wasn't, you know, in a full charge or anything, but surely it weighs more than a 8 foot tall Bigfoot.
Right. You'd think.
And, you know, so what's the component of that noise? What's the component that creates that massive sounding footfall? I don't know that there's an answer. It makes me question.
That's a good point. It's funny because, like, even like out here in the woods, you think there's a squirrel goes running through, and it'll sound like, you know, like an elephant or rhinoceros busting through, being so loud. Then you get, you know, some big buck who just creeps through like the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how small critters can sound large, and large can sound very quiet. And why wouldn't it make noise? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, shoot, the weight that it would take, even if it is an intimidation or territorial thing for it stomping its feet, still, like a rhinoceros.
You know, and in my second and third episodes, the gentleman that lives just nearly 20 minutes from me, who had an experience, him and his daughters both, when it walked out in front of him at their hunting property, he said that as it came out, he described it as looking like a kid having a tantrum because its arms were waving and it was stomping its feet, but he never heard these thunderous stomps. But he could feel the tree, the tree that he was in, the whole area was swamp. And even the ground where the tree was, where his stand was in, was so saturated. It was solid ground, but it was so wet and saturated from the swamp that he could feel the vibration of it when it stopped. He couldn't hear it, but he could feel the vibration of it through the tree.
Wow.
Coming through the ground and through the tree.
Huh. Massive weight.
Yeah.
Lots of unknowns with this.
It certainly is. And
that's the beauty of it, though.
It is. It really is. Makes for hours of interesting conversation.
It absolutely does. As long as you get a couple open minds come together about it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, somebody can shut you down real quick if they just roll their eyes at you and say you're crazy.
Well, at that point, you don't even want to talk to them about it because, you know, they're just not on that level.
Yeah.
I'd rather tell a tree.
Well, Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, guy. Thank you so much for reaching out and taking the time to do this.
Hey, Eric, thanks for having me on, and I'll get on to Dad about getting you a phone call or at minimum, you know, a voice memo or something like that of his account of the predator thing.
Whatever is easiest for him. All right, sir. Well, I look forward to hearing from you.
All right, Eric. Again, yeah, I'll talk to you tomorrow, my man. Thanks for having me on, and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you.
Now I am going home.
Be safe. Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Eric.
Yep.
Take it easy, buddy. Bye.
Good night. Bye.